Liam Carter had sworn off love the day his wife walked out on their infant daughter without looking back. 6 years later, sitting in the back row of a wedding he didn't want to attend, watching strangers celebrate something he no longer believed in, he was already mentally halfway home. Then she appeared. Evelyn Cross, a woman whose name was spoken in boardrooms with reverence and fear, whose presence commanded attention without effort. She looked at him like he was the only person in the room. And in that moment, everything Liam thought he knew about keeping his heart safe started to unravel. If you're watching from somewhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels, and hit that like button if you believe some connections are worth the risk. The wedding was elegant in that carefully arranged way that made Liam uncomfortable. White flowers cascaded from tall vases, crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon light, and every guest seemed to know exactly which fork to use. He tugged at his tie, borrowed from his neighbor because he didn't own one himself, and reminded himself why he'd come. His coworker Marcus had insisted. "You never go anywhere," Marcus had said. "You work, you pick up your kid, you go home. That's not living, man." Liam hadn't argued because Marcus wasn't entirely wrong. His life had become small by design, built around routines that kept things predictable and safe. Wake up at 6, make breakfast for Sophie, drop her at school, work his shift at the warehouse, pick her up. Homework, dinner, bedtime stories. Repeat. There wasn't room for anything else, and he'd convinced himself that was fine. But sitting here now, watching the bride and groom exchange vows he'd once believed in himself, Liam felt the familiar ache settle in his chest. He checked his watch. Another hour, maybe less, and he could leave without seeming rude. Sophie was with Mrs. Chen next door, probably already tucked into bed with her worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. He'd promised to be home before 10. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." The voice came from his left, smooth and faintly amused. Liam turned and found himself looking at a woman who didn't belong in the same category as everyone else in the room. She was probably in her late 20s, dressed in a dark green dress that was simpler than what the other guests wore, but somehow more striking. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup minimal, but what caught him off guard was the directness in her eyes. Like she was actually seeing him, not just making polite conversation. "That obvious?" Liam asked. "Only to someone who feels the same way." She sat down beside him without asking, which somehow felt natural. "Evelyn?" "Liam." "So what brings you here, Liam?" She crossed her legs, tilted her head slightly. "Friend of the bride or the groom?" "Neither, really. The groom's cousin works with me. He insisted I needed to get out more." Liam shrugged. "You?" "Business connection. The bride's father sits on a board I'm trying to get onto." Evelyn glanced toward the front of the room where the ceremony had moved into the ring exchange. "I've learned that attending these things is part of the game. Sounds exhausting." "It is." She looked back at him, and there was something unguarded in her expression for just a moment. "Most people here have already tried to pitch me something or hand me a business card. You're the first person who hasn't." "I don't have a business card." "I noticed." The corner of her mouth lifted. "It's refreshing." The ceremony concluded with applause. The crowd began to migrate toward the reception hall, a steady flow of expensive suits and designer dresses. Liam stood, intending to use the transition as his exit opportunity, but Evelyn stood too. "Stay for one drink," she said. It wasn't quite a question. "I should really—" "One drink. Then you can go back to whatever you're rushing home to." She studied his face. "Unless it's someone?" "My daughter." The words came out automatically, the truth he always led with because it filtered out anyone who wasn't willing to accept his reality. "She's 6. I promised I'd be home early." Something shifted in Evelyn's expression. Not disappointment, but something closer to respect. "Then definitely stay for one drink. Any father who keeps promises to his 6-year-old deserves at least that much time for himself." Liam found himself nodding before he'd fully decided to. There was something about the way she'd said it, without the usual pity or judgment people offered when they learned he was raising Sophie alone, that made him curious. The reception hall was even more elaborate than the ceremony space. Round tables draped in ivory linen surrounded a dance floor that reflected the light from an absurd number of candles. A jazz quartet played something smooth and forgettable in the corner. Liam followed Evelyn to the bar, where she ordered a whiskey neat without hesitation. "I'll have the same." Liam said, though he usually stuck to beer. The bartender poured their drinks with practiced efficiency. Evelyn picked hers up, gestured toward a quieter corner away from the main crowd, and Liam followed. They ended up near tall windows that overlooked manicured gardens just starting to show signs of spring. "So," Evelyn said, taking a sip of her whiskey. "Single dad. That's not something you hear every day." "It's not that uncommon." Liam tried to keep his tone light, but the defensiveness crept in anyway. "I didn't mean it as a criticism." She leaned against the window frame. "Just an observation. What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" Most people didn't ask directly. They danced around it, made assumptions, or waited for him to volunteer the information. Liam appreciated the straightforwardness even as it caught him off guard. "My wife left when Sophie was 4 months old." He took a drink, felt the whiskey burn. "Came home one day and found a note. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother, that she'd made a mistake. I haven't heard from her since." "Jesus." Evelyn's expression darkened. "That's brutal." "Yeah, well," Liam shrugged, though it still carried weight even after 6 years. "Sophie doesn't remember her, which I guess is a blessing. She asks questions sometimes, but she's got me and that's enough." "Is it?" Evelyn asked quietly. "Enough?" The question landed harder than it should have. Liam looked down at his glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "It has to be." "That's not the same thing." "No," he admitted. "It's not." They stood in silence for a moment, and Liam waited for her to change the subject or offer some platitude about how he'd find someone eventually, how Sophie deserved a mother figure, all the things well-meaning people said that made his jaw tighten. But Evelyn just took another sip of her whiskey and said, "I run a tech company. We do data analytics for corporations who want to predict consumer behavior. Started it 5 years ago with money I borrowed from people who thought I'd fail." The shift in topic was jarring, but welcome. "Did you prove them wrong?" "Spectacularly." There was no arrogance in her voice, just fact. "We're valued at $50 million now. I've got 40 employees, contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies, and everyone thinks I have my life completely figured out." "But you don't." "Not even close." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I work 70-hour weeks. I eat most meals at my desk. My apartment is ridiculous, one of those modern places with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looks great but isn't comfortable, and I barely spend time there anyway. I can't remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to, not because it served some strategic purpose. So why do it? Because I'm good at it, because I spent my whole life being told I needed to prove myself, and now I can't stop proving it even though I don't know who I'm trying to convince anymore." She finished her drink, set the glass on a nearby table. "You think that sounds insane?" "I think it sounds lonely," Liam said. Evelyn looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them that felt too significant for two strangers at a wedding. "It is." The jazz quartet transitioned into something slower, and couples began moving onto the dance floor. Liam watched them, thinking about his own wedding 7 years ago. A small ceremony in a courthouse because they'd been young and broke and convinced that love was enough. It hadn't been. Love had failed, left a note on the kitchen counter, and disappeared. "Do you dance?" Evelyn asked. "Not if I can help it." "Good. Neither do I." She glanced toward the crowd. "Want to get out of here?" Liam checked his watch. 9:15. He still had time before he needed to be home. "Where would we go?" "I don't know. Somewhere that doesn't require us to make small talk with people we don't care about." It was a terrible idea. Liam barely knew this woman. She was clearly out of his league in every measurable way. Successful, confident, the kind of person who belonged in rooms like this, even if she didn't enjoy them. And he was a warehouse worker in a borrowed tie who'd sworn off complications the day his daughter became his entire world. But he said, "Okay." They left through a side exit that led to the gardens. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of flowers Liam couldn't name. They walked without a clear destination, following stone paths that wound between carefully trimmed hedges and decorative fountains. Behind them, the sounds of the reception grew fainter, music and laughter fading into something distant and unimportant. "This is better," Evelyn said after a while. "I was starting to forget what fresh air felt like." "You really work that much?" "More, probably. I've got a product launch in 3 weeks that's going to make or break us. If it goes well, we'll double our valuation. If it doesn't, she trailed off. Let's just say failure isn't an option I've prepared for. That sounds like a lot of pressure. It is, but pressure is familiar. I know how to handle pressure. She stopped walking, turned to face him. What I don't know how to handle is this. This? Having a conversation with someone who isn't trying to get something from me, who isn't calculating how knowing me might benefit them. Evelyn's voice was quiet, almost tentative. You have no idea who I am, do you, outside of what I've told you tonight? Liam shook his head. Should I? Probably. My company's been in the news. Business journals love writing profiles about young female CEOs disrupting industries. She said it with faint mockery. But you don't read business journals. Not really my thing. What is your thing? Sophie? Work. Making sure the bills get paid. Liam shoved his hands in his pockets. Reading whatever books she brings home from the library. Fixing things around the apartment because our landlord is useless. Nothing impressive. It sounds real, Evelyn said. That's impressive enough. They started walking again, and Liam found himself talking about things he usually kept to himself. How Sophie had his stubbornness but her mother's eyes, which sometimes hurt to look at. How he dropped out of community college when she was born because someone had to work full-time and his wife had been too overwhelmed to function. How he'd thought about going back to school 100 times but never had the energy or the money or the time. Do you regret it? Evelyn asked. The way things turned out? I regret trusting someone who wasn't ready to be trusted. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. Liam paused. But I don't regret Sophie. She's the only good thing that came from any of it. You're a better person than I am. If someone betrayed me like that, I don't think I'd be able to find the silver lining. You'd be surprised what you can survive when you don't have a choice. They'd circled back toward the building without realizing it. Through the windows, Liam could see the reception still in full swing, people dancing, drinking, celebrating love and commitment, and all the things he'd learned could disappear overnight. His watch read 9:45. I really do need to go, he said, meaning it this time. I know. Evelyn looked at him like she was trying to memorize his face. Can I ask you something? Yeah. If I wanted to see you again, not for business, not for networking, just see you, would that be completely insane? Liam's first instinct was to say yes, it would be insane. She was a CEO worth millions, and he stocked shelves. She lived in a world of product launches and Fortune 500 contracts, and he lived in a 2-bedroom apartment where the bathroom sink leaked. They had nothing in common except a shared ability to feel out of place at weddings. But there was something in the way she looked at him, something vulnerable and honest, that made him hesitate. I don't have time for dating, he said carefully. My life is complicated. Sophie comes first, always, and I'm not looking for anything casual. I did that once, and it destroyed me. I'm not asking for casual. Evelyn stepped closer, and Liam caught the faint scent of her perfume, something subtle and expensive. I'm asking if you'd be willing to have coffee sometime. Just coffee. No expectations, no pressure. Just 2 people who had a decent conversation and might want to have another one. It was such a simple request. Coffee. People had coffee all the time without it meaning anything significant, but Liam knew himself well enough to recognize that if he said yes to coffee, he'd be opening a door he'd kept firmly locked for 6 years. He'd be admitting that maybe, possibly, he wanted something more than the safe, predictable life he'd built. Okay, he heard himself say. Coffee. Evelyn smiled, and it transformed her entire face, made her look younger, less guarded, genuinely happy. She pulled out her phone. Give me your number. They exchanged information there in the garden, under a sky just beginning to show stars. Liam's phone buzzed a moment later with a text from an unknown number. This is Evelyn. So you know I'm real and not some wedding hallucination. He couldn't help but smile. I should go. Drive safe. Liam walked back to his car, a beat-up Honda that looked out of place among the luxury vehicles filling the parking lot. As he drove away, he could see Evelyn in his rearview mirror, still standing in the garden, watching him leave. He told himself it was just coffee. Nothing had to come from it. He could keep his life simple and contained. But when he got home and checked on Sophie, asleep in her bed with her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, he found himself thinking about Evelyn's question. Is it enough? He'd spent 6 years convincing himself that it was, that being a good father meant sacrificing everything else, that Sophie deserved all of him, which meant there was nothing left for anyone else. But standing there in his daughter's doorway, watching her breathe soft and steady in the darkness, Liam felt something shift, a tiny crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. The possibility, however small and terrifying, that maybe he could want more without being selfish, that maybe wanting more didn't mean loving Sophie any less. His phone buzzed. Another text from Evelyn. Thank you for staying. Tonight was the first time in months I felt like myself. Liam stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Same. 3 days later, they met for coffee. The place Evelyn suggested was in the downtown business district, one of those modern cafes with exposed brick and reclaimed wood tables where a simple latte cost $7. Liam showed up in his work clothes, jeans and a plain t-shirt, because he'd come straight from his shift. He spotted Evelyn immediately, sitting by the window in a blazer and dark slacks, her laptop open in front of her. She looked up when he approached, and her expression softened. You made it. Said I would. Liam sat down across from her. This place is overpriced and pretentious? Evelyn closed her laptop. Yeah, but it's close to my office, and the Wi-Fi is good. We can go somewhere else if you want. It's fine. They ordered. Liam got regular coffee, black, which earned a raised eyebrow from the barista who clearly expected something more elaborate. Evelyn got an Americano and paid for both before Liam could argue. So, she said when they were settled with their drinks, tell me about Sophie. It was the right question to ask, the one that relaxed him immediately. Liam told her about his daughter's obsession with dinosaurs, how she could name every species in the museum's prehistoric exhibit, how she'd recently declared she wanted to be a paleontologist when she grew up, though last month it had been an astronaut and the month before that, a pizza chef. She sounds wonderful, Evelyn said, and she sounded like she meant it. She is. She's smart, funny, stubborn as hell. Liam wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe I had anything to do with creating someone that amazing. You're raising her alone. You had everything to do with it. I guess. He took a drink, let the coffee warm him from the inside. What about you? Any interest in kids? I don't know, Evelyn said honestly. I've never let myself think that far ahead. My focus has always been the company, proving I could build something that mattered. The idea of having a family always seemed like something that happened to other people. That sounds lonely. It is, she admitted, but at least it's safe. I've watched too many people, including my own parents, destroy themselves trying to balance career and family and failing at both. I decided early on I'd rather succeed at one thing than fail at everything. That's a bleak way to look at it. Maybe. But I've seen what happens when people try to have it all. Someone always suffers, usually the kids. Liam thought about that. About Sophie growing up without a mother, about the nights he'd lain awake wondering if he was doing enough, if one parent could ever be sufficient. You're probably right, but I didn't have a choice. Sophie needed someone to show up, so I showed up every day, even when I was exhausted or scared or had no idea what I was doing. That's what makes you different. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. Most people I know would have found a way to rationalize leaving, to convince themselves the child would be better off with someone else, or in the system, or with relatives. You didn't run. Running wasn't an option. It's always an option. You just didn't take it. She paused. That's rare. They talked for 2 hours. The conversation moved from parenting to work to the strange isolation of modern life, how you could be surrounded by people and still feel fundamentally alone. Evelyn told him about growing up with parents who valued achievement above everything else, how she'd learned early that love was conditional, performance-based. Liam told her about his own parents, both gone now, who'd been good people but unprepared for how hard life could hit. Do you ever feel angry, Evelyn asked at one point, about your wife leaving? Sometimes. Mostly, I feel tired. Liam finished his coffee, now cold. Anger takes energy I don't have. I've got a kid to raise and bills to pay. I can't afford to waste time being pissed off at someone who isn't coming back. That's probably healthy. Or avoidance. Hard to tell sometimes. Evelyn's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, frowned, then silenced it. Sorry, work never stops. You should probably get back to it. Probably. But she didn't move to leave. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you say yes? To coffee, I mean. You made it pretty clear you're not looking for complications. Liam considered the question. He could give her the easy answer, that it was just coffee, harmless, nothing to overthink. But Evelyn deserved more than that. Because for the first time in 6 years, he said slowly, I met someone who didn't make me feel like I had to apologize for my life. You didn't look at me with pity when I mentioned Sophie. You didn't ask when I was planning to move on or suggest I needed to get back out there. You just listened. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. Evelyn's phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up, read whatever message had come through, and sighed. I really do have to go. We've got a meeting in 20 minutes, and I need to prep. Go. I should pick up Sophie anyway. They stood together, gathered their things. Outside the cafe, the afternoon sun cut sharp shadows across the sidewalk. Evelyn hesitated before leaving. Same time next week? She asked. Liam knew he should probably say no. That this was already becoming something more than coffee, something that could complicate the careful balance of his life. But looking at Evelyn, at the hope barely visible beneath her composed expression, he found he didn't want to say no. Yeah, same time. She smiled, touched his arm briefly, then walked away toward a black sedan waiting at the curb. Liam watched her go, then headed to his own car and drove to Sophie's school. His daughter burst out of the after-school program like she always did, backpack bouncing, talking a mile a minute about the science experiment they'd done with vinegar and baking soda. Liam listened, asked questions, felt himself settle back into the rhythm of his real life, the one that mattered. But that night, after Sophie was asleep and the apartment was quiet, he found himself staring at his phone, at Evelyn's contact information, at the possibility of something he'd convinced himself he didn't need. His phone buzzed, a text from her. Thank you for today. I forgot how good it feels to talk to someone who doesn't want anything from me. Liam typed back, same. See you next week. He set the phone down, told himself it was still just coffee. Nothing had to change. He could keep his life simple and safe. But as he got ready for bed, Liam caught sight of himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. For 6 years, he'd been Sophie's father first and himself second. He'd stopped thinking about what he wanted, what he needed, because those things felt selfish when he had a child depending on him. Now, for the first time and longer than he could remember, he wanted something. Not for Sophie, not for anyone else, just for himself. And that terrified him more than anything. Gut. The weeks that followed developed a pattern. Every Wednesday afternoon, Liam and Evelyn met for coffee. Sometimes at the same downtown cafe, sometimes at different places Evelyn found, each one somehow managing to be both overpriced and charming. They talked about everything and nothing, work frustrations, childhood memories, the strange anxiety of being an adult and still feeling like you're faking it. Evelyn told him about the pressure of the upcoming product launch, how everything she'd built could collapse if it failed. Liam told her about Sophie's teacher calling to say his daughter was exceptionally bright, but sometimes struggles with focus, which was apparently code for she gets bored easily and acts out. Like father, like daughter, Evelyn had said, and Liam didn't correct her because the comparison felt true. A month in, their coffee meetings started extending longer. 2 hours became 3. 3 became losing track of time entirely, until Liam's phone alarm reminded him he needed to pick up Sophie. Evelyn began arranging her schedule around their Wednesdays, blocking out time slots that used to be filled with meetings and conference calls. My assistant thinks I've lost my mind, she'd admitted during their 5th meeting. I haven't taken a 2-hour lunch break in 3 years. You can still back out, Liam had said. I'll understand. I don't want to back out. It was around week 6 that things shifted. They'd met at a park instead of a cafe because the weather was finally warm enough to sit outside. Liam had suggested it, half expecting Evelyn to refuse, but she'd shown up in jeans, the first time he'd seen her in anything casual, and looked genuinely pleased to be there. They walked along the paths, past families with strollers and couples holding hands, and teenagers playing frisbee. Normal people doing normal things. Liam wondered if they looked like a couple to anyone watching, if some stranger might glance at them and assume they belonged together. Can I tell you something? Evelyn said as they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. Always. I think I'm doing this wrong. She stared at the water, where ducks paddled in lazy circles. This whole whatever we're doing. I keep waiting for you to ask for something. Money, connections, a job at my company, something, but you never do. Because I don't want anything. Everyone wants something. Not from you. Liam shifted to look at her. I like spending time with you. That's it. There's no angle. I'm not used to that, Evelyn said quietly. In my world, every relationship is transactional. People invest time in me because they want access, opportunities, favors. I've learned to accept it. But with you, it's just coffee. Is it? She turned to face him, and her expression was uncharacteristically vulnerable. Because it doesn't feel like just coffee anymore. At least not to me. Liam's heart started beating faster. He'd felt it too, the shift from casual meetings to something deeper, but he'd been careful not to name it. Naming it made it real, made it something he'd have to decide about. What does it feel like to you? He asked. Like I've been holding my breath for 5 years, and I'm finally remembering how to exhale. Evelyn laughed, but it sounded almost pained. That probably sounds ridiculous. No, it sounds honest. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the ducks. Somewhere behind them, a child laughed, high and bright and full of joy. Liam thought about Sophie, about the conversation he'd need to have with her if this became something real, about how to explain that he'd met someone who made him feel less alone without making his daughter think she wasn't enough. I'm scared, he admitted. I haven't done this in 6 years, and last time I did, it ended with me raising a baby alone and wondering what I'd done wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. She did. Maybe, but it still broke something in me, made me believe that wanting more than what I had was asking for disaster. Evelyn reached over and took his hand. Her palm was warm, her grip firm. I'm scared too. I've spent my entire adult life building walls to keep people out. Letting someone in feels like dismantling everything I've worked for. So what do we do? I don't know. She squeezed his hand. But I know I don't want to stop seeing you. Liam looked at their joined hands, at how natural it felt despite how terrifying it should be. Neither do I. Then let's figure it out, slowly. No pressure, no expectations. Just see where this goes. It was the most uncertain plan Liam had ever agreed to. But looking at Evelyn, at the hope and fear warring in her expression, he found himself nodding. Okay, we'll figure it out. That conversation in the park changed things, though neither of them acknowledged it directly. Their Wednesday meetings continued, but now there was an undercurrent of something unspoken, a mutual understanding that they were building towards something neither could quite name yet. 2 weeks later, Evelyn did something unexpected. She showed up at the warehouse where Liam worked. He was in the middle of his shift, stacking boxes of electronics onto pallets, when Marcus came over with a weird expression on his face. Dude, there's some woman in the front office asking for you, expensive looking. Said her name was Evelyn? Liam nearly dropped the box he was holding. What? Yeah, man. She's got the front desk. People all confused because nobody just shows up here looking for warehouse guys. Marcus grinned. She your girlfriend or something? It's complicated. That's what people say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. Liam set down the box and headed toward the front office, his mind racing. They'd agreed to keep things simple, to take it slow. Showing up at his workplace didn't exactly fit that plan. When he pushed through the double doors into the lobby, he found Evelyn standing by the water cooler looking profoundly out of place in her tailored gray suit among the industrial decor and safety posters. Hey, he said, aware that the receptionist was watching them with undisguised curiosity. Everything okay? I'm sorry for just showing up. Evelyn's voice was tight, controlled in a way that told him she was anything but calm. I know we said we'd take things slow, but I needed to see you, and I didn't want to wait until Wednesday. What happened? Can we talk? Outside? Liam glanced back toward the warehouse floor. His shift didn't end for another 2 hours, but one look at Evelyn's face told him this wasn't something that could wait. He told the receptionist he was taking his break and led Evelyn out to the parking lot. The afternoon sun was brutal, reflecting off car windshields and making him squint. Evelyn walked a few steps away from the building, then stopped and turned to face him. The product launch failed, she said without preamble. Not just failed, it was a disaster. The software had a critical bug that we somehow missed in testing. It crashed during the live demonstration in front of investors and potential clients. I've spent the last 48 hours in damage control meetings, and She stopped, took a breath. I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't tell me it's fine when it's not fine. Liam had never seen her like this. The composure she always carried stripped away to reveal something raw underneath. What does this mean for your company? I don't know yet. We've lost 2 major contracts already. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss next steps, and I'm pretty sure half of them want me out. She laughed, but it was hollow. 5 years of work, and it might all collapse because I missed one bug. One stupid bug that a junior developer should have caught. Did a junior developer catch it? What? Did someone on your team find the bug and you ignored them, or did everyone miss it? Evelyn frowned. Everyone missed it. We did 3 rounds of testing and it never showed up until the worst possible moment. Then it's not just on you, it's a team failure. I'm the CEO. Everything is on me. She started pacing, her heels clicking against the asphalt. That's how it works. When things go well, I get the credit. When they go badly, I take the fall. That's a shit system. Welcome to running a company. She stopped pacing and looked at him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come here. You're at work, you don't need me dumping this on you. Stop. Liam stepped closer to her. You're allowed to fall apart. You don't have to be composed and in control every second of every day. I do, though. If I'm not, everything crumbles. Everything's already crumbling. You just said so yourself. He kept his voice gentle. So maybe for 5 minutes you can just be a person who's had a really bad week instead of a CEO who has to fix everything. Something in Evelyn's expression broke. Not dramatically, not with tears, but with a kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. She sat down on the curb, right there in the parking lot in her expensive suit, and put her head in her hands. Liam sat down beside her. The asphalt was hot through his jeans, and he could hear the sound of forklifts moving inside the warehouse. The ordinary rhythm of his ordinary job continuing while Evelyn's world fell apart. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. I don't know how to fail. Nobody does. But you do it anyway, and then you figure out what comes next. What if there is no next? What if this is it, the end of everything I've built? Then you build something else. Or you fix this. But you don't do it alone. Liam bumped his shoulder against hers. That's what you've got people for. I don't have people. I have employees and investors and board members who all need something from me. You've got me. Evelyn lifted her head and looked at him. You're at work. You should be inside, not sitting in a parking lot with someone who's having a meltdown. My break's got another 10 minutes, and even if it didn't, I'd take the hit. He meant it. Whatever this thing between them was, it mattered more than his supervisor's disapproval. You came here because you needed someone. I'm someone. That's how this works. I'm not used to needing anyone. I know, but maybe it's time to get used to it. They sat there in silence while the sun beat down and the world continued around them. Eventually, Evelyn's breathing steadied and some of the tension left her shoulders. Thank you, she said, for not trying to fix it or tell me it'll all work out. Will it work out? I have no idea, but I'll find out tomorrow. She stood up, brushed off her suit. I should let you get back to work. Liam stood too. Call me after the meeting. I don't care what time. It might be late. I don't care. Evelyn studied his face for a moment, then did something she'd never done before. She leaned in and kissed him. It was brief, almost hesitant, but it sent electricity through Liam's entire body. When she pulled back, her expression was unreadable. I'll call you, she said, then walked to her car and drove away. Liam stood in the parking lot for a full minute after she left, trying to process what had just happened. Then Marcus stuck his head out the door. Dude, you're going to be late clocking back in. Yeah, I'm coming. But as Liam returned to the warehouse and picked up where he'd left off, he couldn't stop thinking about that kiss, about how natural it had felt, how right, despite every logical reason it shouldn't work between them. That night after Sophie was asleep, Liam lay in bed staring at his phone, waiting for it to ring. It was past 11 when it finally did. Hey, Evelyn's voice was tired but steady. The meeting just ended. How bad? They didn't fire me, that's something, but I'm on probation basically. I've got 3 months to turn this around or they're bringing in new leadership. Can you do it? Turn it around in 3 months?
I don't know. Maybe. If I work 20 hours a day and sacrifice what's left of my life? She paused, which is exactly what got me into this mess in the first place. What do you mean?
I was so focused on the launch, on proving we could scale, that I stopped paying attention to the details. I trusted my team to catch what I was missing, but I also created an environment where people were afraid to slow down and double-check their work because I kept pushing for faster turnaround. Evelyn's voice got quieter. This is my fault. Not because I missed the bug, but because I built a culture where missing it was inevitable. Liam didn't know enough about running companies to argue with her analysis, but he knew something about taking responsibility for things that weren't entirely your fault. So what are you going to do? He asked. Start over. Rebuild the team's trust. Actually listen when people tell me we're moving too fast. She let out a long breath. And probably work myself into the ground trying to fix it all before the deadline. That's not a solution. It's the only one I've got. No, it's not. You could also admit you can't do it alone and actually ask for help. From who? Your team. Other CEOs who've been through this. Hell, hire a consultant if you need to. Liam shifted in bed, staring at the ceiling. You're so used to being the person who has all the answers that you've forgotten it's okay not to. When did you get so wise about running companies? I'm not. But I know about being in over your head and too stubborn to admit it. I did that for 2 years after Sophie was born. Tried to do everything myself, wouldn't accept help from anyone because I thought asking meant I was failing. He remembered those years with painful clarity. It almost destroyed me. What saved me was finally telling Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, that I couldn't do it all. She started watching Sophie one night a week so I could sleep. That one night made everything else manageable. I don't have a Mrs. Chen. Yes, you do. You've got 40 employees who probably want to help but don't know how. You've got a board that's invested in your success even if they're pissed right now. And you've got me, for whatever that's worth. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. It's worth a lot. More than you know. Then let me help. I don't know anything about tech or data analytics or whatever, but I can listen. I can remind you to eat and sleep. I can be the person who tells you when you're being unreasonable. You do that? I'm already doing it. He heard her laugh, soft and genuine. You are, aren't you? Someone has to. They talked for another hour. Not about the company or the crisis, but about smaller things. Sophie's upcoming school play where she'd been cast as a tree. The fact that Liam's car was making a weird rattling sound he couldn't afford to fix. How Evelyn's apartment had a view of the city, but she couldn't remember the last time she'd actually looked at it. I miss you, Evelyn said at one point, and it caught Liam off guard because they'd just seen each other that afternoon. I'm right here. I know, but I miss you anyway. She paused. Is that crazy? Probably, but I get it. When they finally hung up, it was past 1 a.m. Liam had to be up in 5 hours for his shift, but he didn't regret staying on the phone. Something had shifted between them again. The kiss in the parking lot had been the first crack. This conversation felt like breaking through entirely. The next few weeks were hard. Evelyn threw herself into fixing her company with the same intensity she'd brought to building it. She hired a crisis management consultant, restructured her development team, and implemented new quality control processes that slowed everything down but caught problems before they became disasters. The work was exhausting and relentless, and Liam watched her push herself to the edge of burnout more than once. Their Wednesday meetings became lifelines for both of them. Evelyn would show up looking worn down, order coffee she barely drank, and talk about everything that was going wrong. Liam listened, offered perspective when he could, and mostly just reminded her that she was more than her company's valuation. I got into a fight with my COO today, Evelyn said during one of their meetings, about 6 weeks into the crisis. He wanted to lay off 15 people to cut costs. I said no. Good. The board disagrees. They think I'm being sentimental. She stirred her coffee absently. Maybe I am. But those 15 people have families, mortgages, lives that depend on their paychecks. I can't just sacrifice them to save money. So don't. It might cost me my job. Then it costs you your job. But at least you'll be able to live with yourself. Evelyn looked at him with something like wonder. How do you do that? Do what?
Make everything seem so simple, black and white. It's not simple. It's just priorities. You've got to decide what matters more, keeping your position or keeping your integrity. Can't always have both. I want both. Everyone does. Doesn't mean it's possible. She laughed, but it was tired. You're kind of an asshole sometimes, you know that? Yeah, but I'm honest. That's why I like you.
It was the first time either of them had said it out loud. I like you. 3 simple words that carried the weight of everything they'd been building toward. Liam felt his pulse quicken. I like you too, he said. Even though I'm a workaholic with control issues who's probably going to lose her company. Even though. Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. They'd held hands before, but this felt different, more deliberate, like they were both acknowledging what this was becoming. I want to meet her, Evelyn said quietly. Sophie, if that's okay. Liam's first instinct was to say no. Not because he didn't trust Evelyn, but because introducing her to Sophie felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. His daughter had never met anyone he'd dated, not that there'd been anyone to meet in 6 years. Bringing Evelyn into Sophie's life meant admitting this was serious, that it mattered. That's a big step, he said carefully. I know. And if you're not ready, I understand. But I want you to know I'm ready, whenever you are.
Liam thought about Sophie, about how she'd been asking lately why he seemed happier, about how she'd found him smiling at his phone one evening and demanded to know what was so funny. He'd deflected, told her it was just a meme, but she'd looked at him with those 2 smart eyes and said, You're lying, but that's okay. You can tell me when you're ready. His daughter was 6 years old and already more emotionally intelligent than most adults. Okay, Liam heard himself say, but we do it slow, casual, like you're just a friend. I am a friend. You know what I mean. I do. Evelyn squeezed his hand. Thank you. They planned it for the following Sunday. Nothing formal, just a trip to the park where Sophie could play and Evelyn could exist in their world without pressure. Liam spent the week trying not to overthink it, but by Sunday morning he was a nervous wreck. Why do you keep checking your phone? Sophie asked while they ate breakfast. And why did you clean the whole apartment yesterday? We never clean on Saturdays. I told you we're meeting a friend at the park today. What kind of friend? Just a friend, someone I've been talking to. Sophie studied him with that unnerving intensity she'd inherited from him. Is it a lady friend? Why would you ask that? Because you're acting weird. You only act weird when something's important. She took a bite of her cereal. It's okay if it's a lady friend. I won't be mad. Liam set down his coffee cup. Would you be okay if it was? Depends. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she like dinosaurs? I don't know. You'll have to ask her. Okay. Sophie went back to her cereal like the conversation was settled. What's her name? Evelyn. That's a fancy name. She's kind of a fancy person. Fancier than us? Liam thought about how to answer that. She has a different kind of life than we do. But that doesn't make her better or worse, just different. Sophie seemed to accept this. They finished breakfast, got dressed, and headed to the park. Evelyn was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench near the playground. She'd dressed down, jeans and a simple sweater, but she still looked out of place in a way Liam couldn't quite define. Maybe it was the way she held herself, or maybe it was just that he knew her well enough now to see how uncomfortable she was. Hey, he said as they approached. This is Sophie. Sophie, this is Evelyn. His daughter looked up at Evelyn with open curiosity. Do you like dinosaurs? Evelyn blinked, clearly not having expected that opening. I don't know much about them, honestly. That's okay. I can teach you. Sophie grabbed Evelyn's hand without hesitation. Come on, I'll show you the best climbing rock. It looks like a stegosaurus. And just like that, his daughter dragged Evelyn toward the playground, leaving Liam to follow behind. He watched as Sophie explained the playground's various features, which swings were fastest, which slides were too hot in the sun, where the best hiding spots were for hide and seek. Evelyn listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions and letting Sophie lead. After about 20 minutes, Sophie ran off to play with some other kids, leaving Liam and Evelyn alone on a bench. She's amazing, Evelyn said. You didn't tell me she was this smart. I did, actually, multiple times. I know, but I thought you were biased. Turns out you were just being accurate. She watched Sophie navigate the monkey bars with determination. She looks like you. Same eyes. Yeah, people say that. Liam didn't mention that Sophie also had her mother's smile, the one feature he couldn't quite separate from the woman who'd abandoned them. Is this weird for you? Evelyn asked. Having me here? Terrifying, actually. That's honest. You asked. She bumped her shoulder against his. For what it's worth, I'm terrified too. I've never done this before. Met someone's kid. I keep worrying I'm going to say the wrong thing or mess it up somehow. You're doing fine. Sophie likes you. How can you tell? She's still talking to you. If she didn't like you, she'd ignore you completely. She's got my stubbornness and zero filter. Evelyn laughed. That tracks. They spent 2 hours at the park. Sophie played, occasionally running back to tell them about some discovery or show them a cool stick she'd found. Evelyn engaged with all of it. The stick presentations, the elaborate explanations of playground politics, the request to push her on the swings. Liam watched it all with a strange feeling in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. On the drive home, Sophie was quiet in the back seat. Liam glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You okay back there? Yeah, just thinking. About what? Is Evelyn your girlfriend? There it was, the question he'd been dreading. Liam considered lying, deflecting, but Sophie deserved better than that. I don't know yet, maybe. Would that bother you? I don't think so. She's nice, and she didn't treat me like a baby, which is good. Sophie kicked her feet against the seat. Does this mean she's going to be around more? Maybe, if that's okay with you. It's okay. But Dad? Yeah? Don't mess it up. She seems like she likes you, and you haven't been this not sad in a long time. Liam's throat tightened. He hadn't realized Sophie had noticed his sadness, the low-level grief he'd carried for 6 years. I'll try not to mess it up. Good. Because I like her too. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam called Evelyn. She gave us her blessing, he said when she answered. Really? Really? Told me not to mess it up. Smart kid. You should listen to her. Evelyn's voice was warm. Today was good. Really good. Thank you for letting me into that part of your life. Thank you for not running away screaming when Sophie made you examine 17 different rocks. They were very interesting rocks. She explained the geological significance of each one. She made that up. I know, but she was very convincing. Liam smiled, lying back on his bed. So what happens now? I don't know. What do you want to happen? It was a loaded question. What Liam wanted felt too big to say out loud, too presumptuous, too risky. But Evelyn had been honest with him from the start. She deserved the same. I want to stop pretending this is just coffee, he said. I want to stop telling myself we're taking it slow when I think about you constantly. He paused, gathering courage. I want to see where this goes without holding back. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. That's what I want too. Yeah, I'm tired of being careful, tired of protecting myself from things that might hurt. You're the first person in years who's made me want to try. Her voice got softer. So let's try, for real. Okay, for real. They made it official the next Wednesday, not with any grand gesture, but with Evelyn showing up at their usual coffee shop and saying, I don't want to do this halfway anymore. I want all of it, the complications, the risk, everything. Liam had kissed her right there in the cafe, in front of the barista and the laptop workers and everyone else. And when they pulled apart, he'd felt something shift in his chest, the wall he'd built around his heart cracking wider, letting in light he'd forgotten existed. For 3 weeks, it was good. Better than good. Evelyn started joining them for dinners at Liam's apartment, sitting at their small kitchen table and listening to Sophie's elaborate stories. She brought takeout from nice restaurants Liam couldn't afford, never making a big deal about it. She asked Sophie about school, about her friends, about the elaborate dinosaur diorama she was building for science class. You're good with her, Liam said one night after Sophie had gone to bed. I'm winging it, mostly, but she makes it easy. Evelyn was washing dishes, something she'd started doing without being asked. She's a special kid. She is, and she really likes you. The feeling's mutual. Liam came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back against him, and for a moment everything felt simple. Possible. I need to tell you something. Evelyn said quietly. That sounds ominous.
It might be. She turned to face him, water dripping from her hands. The company's stabilizing. We're not out of the woods yet, but the last 6 weeks of changes are working. We might actually survive this. That's good news, right?
It is. But it also means I'm going to be even busier for a while. We've got investors coming back, new contracts in negotiation. The board wants me to prove I can scale sustainably this time, which means more oversight, more meetings, more everything. She looked at him with worry in her eyes. I don't want that to affect this. Us. It won't, Liam said, though he felt the first flutter of concern. You don't know that. Neither do you, but we'll figure it out.
Evelyn wanted to believe him. He could see it in her face, the desire to trust that they could make this work, despite everything pulling them in different directions. But there was doubt there too, the same doubt Liam felt but refused to name. Okay, she said finally, we'll figure it out. But over the next 2 weeks, figuring it out got harder. Evelyn's schedule exploded. Their Wednesday meetings got pushed back, then rescheduled, then canceled. Dinners at his apartment became rushed affairs where she showed up late and left early, apologizing the whole time. Phone calls that used to last hours got shorter, more distracted. Liam tried to be understanding. He knew how demanding her work was, how much pressure she was under, but he also felt something familiar creeping in, the sense of being second priority, of waiting for someone who might not show up. It came to a head on a Thursday night when Evelyn was supposed to come over for dinner. Sophie had spent an hour helping Liam make spaghetti from scratch, her favorite. They'd set the table carefully, even put out the nice plates they almost never used. 7 o'clock came and went with no Evelyn. Then 7:30. At 8, Liam's phone buzzed. The text was apologetic but brief. Emergency meeting with investors. Can't make it. So sorry. Sophie looked at the cold spaghetti, then at Liam. She's not coming, is she? No, baby. She had a work thing. She always has work things. Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact, but Liam heard the disappointment underneath. It's okay. We can eat without her. They did, but the meal felt hollow. After Sophie was in bed, Liam called Evelyn. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding exhausted. I'm so sorry about tonight, she said before he could speak. The meeting ran long, and then there was another crisis, and you don't have to explain. I feel like I do. You and Sophie went through all that trouble. Evelyn, Liam kept his voice calm. I get it. Work comes first sometimes. I'm not mad. You sound mad. I'm not. I'm just... He struggled to find the right words. I'm worried. About what? That this is how it's always going to be. You promising to be there and then something at work pulling you away. Me and Sophie waiting for you to have time for us. That's not fair. You knew how demanding my job was from the start. I did, but I thought we'd figure out how to balance it. Instead, it feels like we're right back where we started. You working yourself to death and me on the outside hoping for scraps of your time. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. What do you want me to do, Liam? Quit my job? Stop trying to save my company? No, I want you to decide what actually matters to you. You matter. You and Sophie both matter. Then act like it. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, but he didn't take them back. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like we only matter when work isn't demanding your attention, and that's not enough. So what are you saying? Evelyn's voice had gone cold. That you want to end this? I'm saying I need you to choose. Not right now, not in this conversation, but soon, because I've done this before, been with someone who couldn't prioritize me and Sophie, and I won't do it again, no matter how much I care about you. He hung up before she could respond, hands shaking. Part of him wanted to call back immediately to apologize and take it all back. But he knew he was right. Sophie had already been disappointed enough for one lifetime. He wouldn't let it happen again. His phone stayed silent for the rest of the night. The silence lasted 3 days. 3 days of Liam going through the motions, work, picking up Sophie, making dinner, helping with homework, while his phone sat on the counter like an accusation. He checked it compulsively anyway, hoping for a text that never came. Sophie noticed, of course. She was too observant not to. Is Evelyn mad at you? She asked on Saturday morning while they made pancakes. I don't know, baby. Did you have a fight? Sort of. Liam flipped a pancake, watched it land crooked.
Sometimes adults disagree about important things. What did you disagree about? How did you explain adult relationship dynamics to a 6-year-old? That sometimes caring about someone wasn't enough when your lives pulled in opposite directions? That Liam had learned the hard way that love required more than feelings, it required presence, consistency, showing up even when it was inconvenient? We disagreed about time, he said finally, about making time for people who matter. Sophie poured more batter onto the griddle without being asked. She'd gotten good at helping in the kitchen, knew the routine by heart. Do we matter to her? The question hit harder than it should have. I think so, but I'm not sure she knows how to show it. That's sad. Yeah, it is. They ate their pancakes in relative quiet, and Liam tried not to think about how Evelyn would have added chocolate chips to the batter because Sophie liked them that way. How she'd started learning their rhythms, their small traditions. How it had felt like she was becoming part of their life instead of someone visiting from the outside. His phone finally rang Sunday evening. Liam almost didn't answer it, but Sophie was already in bed and he'd never been good at leaving things unresolved. Hey, Evelyn's voice was rough, like she hadn't slept. Can we talk? I thought that's what we were doing. In person. Please. Liam looked at the clock. 8:30. Mrs. Chen was watching TV in her apartment next door like she did every Sunday night. She wouldn't mind keeping an ear out for Sophie. Where? He asked. The park, where we took Sophie. I'm already here. He almost said no. The smart thing would be to keep distance, to protect himself and his daughter from more disappointment. But he'd never been good at smart when it came to people he cared about. Give me 20 minutes. Mrs. Chen agreed to listen for Sophie without asking questions, though her knowing look said plenty. Liam drove to the park in the dark, found Evelyn sitting on the same bench where they'd sat weeks ago when everything had felt possible. She stood when she saw him. Thank you for coming. You said you wanted to talk. I do, but first I need to apologize. Evelyn's hands twisted together, a nervous gesture he'd never seen from her before. You were right, about everything. I've been treating you and Sophie like you only matter when work isn't consuming me, and that's not fair to either of you. No, it's not. I know, and I'm sorry. But Liam, I don't know how to do this differently. I've spent 5 years building this company. It's not just a job, it's everything I've worked for, everything I am. Asking me to put it second feels like asking me to stop being myself. I'm not asking you to put it second. I'm asking you to make room for us. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you want me to choose, my career or you, and that's an impossible choice. Liam sat down on the bench, suddenly tired. My ex-wife said something similar, that being a mother felt like giving up herself, that she couldn't be both the person she wanted to be and the parent Sophie needed. So she chose herself and left. I'm not her. I know that, but the pattern feels familiar. Someone who can't figure out how to want me and want their own life at the same time. Evelyn sat beside him, keeping a careful distance between them. That's not what this is. Then what is it? It's me being terrified. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm terrified that if I let myself need you, if I make space for this relationship, everything I've built will fall apart, that I'll lose focus and the company will fail and I'll have nothing left. You'd have us. Would I? Or would you eventually get tired of waiting for me to be less broken and leave anyway? The question hung in the air between them. Liam turned to look at her, really look at her. In the dim light from the park lamps, she looked young and scared, nothing like the composed CEO who'd approached him at that wedding. I'm not going to lie and say I'd wait forever, he said quietly. I've got Sophie to think about. I can't let her get attached to someone who's only half present. But I'm also not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to try. I am trying. Are you? Because missing dinner without a real apology isn't trying. Canceling plans last minute isn't trying. Texting instead of calling isn't trying. He kept his voice gentle but firm. Trying looks like actually showing up, even when it's hard, even when work is demanding, especially then. I don't know if I can do that. Then we should probably stop this now. Before Sophie gets more hurt. Before I do. Evelyn flinched like he'd hit her. Is that what you want? No. But I'm not going to settle for scraps of someone's time because I'm desperate not to be alone. I did that once,
and it destroyed me. I won't do it again, even for you." They sat in silence. Somewhere across the park, a dog barked. The sound of traffic from the nearby highway was a constant white noise, the background hum of the city that never really stopped. "My father left when I was 8, Evelyn said suddenly. "Just walked out one day because my mother was too focused on her career to notice their marriage was falling apart. I watched her throw herself even harder into work after that. Like, if she just achieved enough, it would prove she'd made the right choice, that her career was worth more than her marriage." Liam didn't say anything, just waited. "I swore I'd never end up like her. Alone, successful, but alone. And yet here I am, 30 years old, running a company I built from nothing, and the first person who's made me feel something real in years is telling me I'm doing exactly what she did." Evelyn's laugh was bitter. "The irony isn't lost on me. You're not your mother." "How do you know?" "Because you're here. Because you're scared of becoming her, which means you're aware enough to make different choices." Liam shifted to face her. "But being aware isn't enough. You have to actually do something different. I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You just don't want to because it's uncomfortable and scary and might mean your company doesn't come first anymore." Evelyn closed her eyes. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's the hardest thing in the world. But it's also the only thing that matters." He reached over and took her hand. "I need you to decide what you actually want, Evelyn. Not what you think you should want. Not what will make your board happy or prove something to your mother or whatever. What do you actually want?" "I want both. I want my company to succeed and I want to be with you and Sophie. I want it all." "Then you need to figure out how to make that work. Because right now, you're failing at both." She opened her eyes, looked at him with something like desperation. "How?" "I don't have all the answers, but I know you're smart enough to find them if you actually prioritize it." He squeezed her hand. "Hire better people. Delegate more. Set boundaries with your board. Stop acting like you're the only person who can save your company. What if I do all that and it still fails?" "Then it fails. But at least you'll have tried to build a life that's about more than just work." "And if I can't? If I try and still can't make it work?" Liam took a breath, said the thing he'd been avoiding. "Then we end this now, while we can still be kind to each other, before it gets messy and painful and ruins whatever good we had." Evelyn pulled her hand away. "You'd really walk away?" "For Sophie, yes, without hesitation." He held her gaze. "But I don't want to. I want you to prove me wrong. I want you to show me that you can care about your work and still make room for us." "That's a lot of pressure." "I know, but that's what relationships are. Pressure to show up, to be better, to choose someone else's needs sometimes even when it's inconvenient." He stood up. "I should get back. Mrs. Chen's watching Sophie." "Wait." Evelyn stood too. "Just give me some time to figure this out, please." "How much time?" "I don't know. A week? 2? Liam thought about it. 2 weeks of uncertainty, of not knowing if she'd choose them or if this was just delaying the inevitable. But he'd asked her to try, and trying required time. 2 weeks, he agreed. "But Evelyn, I need you to understand something. If you decide you can't do this, that's okay. I won't hate you for it, but you need to actually decide, not just let it drift until I make the decision for you." "I understand." He started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I think you're capable of more than you give yourself credit for. You just have to want it badly enough." Evelyn nodded but didn't say anything. Liam left her standing there in the park, and the whole drive home he wondered if he'd just ended something that could have been important or given it a chance to become what it should have been from the start. The next morning, Liam woke up to find his phone full of notifications. Not from Evelyn, but from Marcus and a few other coworkers. Confused, he opened the messages and felt his stomach drop. There were screenshots, articles, a business news website with a headline that made his vision blur. Tech CEO Evelyn Cross spotted with mysterious companion, new romance or strategic connection. The article included photos. Him and Evelyn at a coffee shop, walking in the park with Sophie. The grainy images were clearly taken from a distance, probably by someone's phone, but they were clear enough to identify both of them. The article was speculative, full of phrases like "sources suggest" and "industry insiders wonder," but the implication was clear. People were asking questions about who Liam was, whether he had business connections to Evelyn's company, whether this was some kind of conflict of interest. His phone rang. Evelyn. "Did you see it?" she asked without preamble. "Yeah, just now."
I'm so sorry. Someone must have sold photos to the business press. They've been circling since the product launch disaster, looking for any story they can spin. Her voice was tight with stress. My PR team is working on damage control, but Liam, this is going to get ugly. They're going to dig into your life, ask questions, maybe even show up at your work. Why? I'm nobody.
"You're dating me. That makes you somebody, at least to people who follow tech industry gossip." She paused. "My board called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. They want to know who you are, whether this relationship poses any risk to the company." "Risk? What kind of risk?" "Any kind. Reputational, financial, strategic. They're paranoid right now because of the launch failure. Anything that might distract from recovery is a problem." Liam sat down on his couch, trying to process. "What are you going to tell them?" "The truth. That you're someone I care about, that there's no business connection, that my personal life is separate from the company." "Will they accept that?"
I don't know, but I'm not going to lie about you. About us. Her voice softened. I know the timing of this is terrible, given our conversation last night, but I need you to know, whatever I decide about how to balance work and you, it won't be because I'm ashamed of this relationship. It'll be because I'm trying to figure out how to protect everyone involved. I appreciate that, but Evelyn, Sophie goes to public school. She's got friends, teachers who know her. If reporters start digging into my life, they're going to find her, and I won't let my daughter become part of some business news story. I understand. I'll do everything I can to keep both of you out of it. Can you, though? If your board is already asking questions? Evelyn didn't answer right away. I'll try.
After they hung up, Liam sat staring at his phone. The article had already been shared across social media, picked up by other business news sites. In the comments, people speculated about who he was, what he did, why a successful CEO would be dating someone who clearly wasn't in her social circle. Some comments were neutral. Others were cruel. A few suggested he was using her for money or connections. One said he looked out of his league and wondered what she saw in him. Liam knew he shouldn't read the comments, but he couldn't stop. Each one reinforced what he'd already known, that he and Evelyn came from different worlds, and those worlds didn't mesh easily. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dude, are you seriously dating Evelyn Cross, the tech CEO? Why didn't you tell me?" Liam didn't respond. He got Sophie ready for school, made her breakfast, tried to act normal even though his mind was racing. At drop-off, one of the other parents gave him a strange look, and Liam wondered if they'd seen the article too. Work was worse. By the time he got to the warehouse, everyone had seen it. The looks ranged from impressed to suspicious to outright hostile. His supervisor called him into the office. "Is this going to be a problem?" the supervisor asked, gesturing at his computer screen where the article was pulled up. "No, sir. It's just personal stuff. Won't affect my work." "Better not. We don't need media attention here. And if you're suddenly too good for warehouse work now that you're dating a millionaire, I'm not. This doesn't change anything." But it did change things. The other workers treated him differently now. Some wanted details, asked invasive questions about Evelyn and her money. Others kept their distance, like associating with him might somehow compromise them. Marcus was the only one who acted normal, though even he seemed awed by the revelation. "You're really dating her," Marcus said during their lunch break. "Evelyn Cross, worth $50 million. The company's worth $50 million, not her personally." "Still, that's insane, man. How did you even meet someone like that?" "At a wedding. It just happened." Marcus shook his head. "You're living some kind of fairy tale, you know that?" "Doesn't feel like a fairy tale right now." "Why not?" Liam considered how much to say. "Because fairy tales don't include your relationship becoming business news, or your coworkers looking at you like you've suddenly become a different person. That'll blow over. Give it a few days and something else will be the big story." Liam hoped Marcus was right, but he had a sinking feeling this was just the beginning. That afternoon, while Liam was stacking pallets, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Liam Carter?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Who's asking?" "I'm a reporter with Business Weekly. I'm working on a story about Evelyn Cross, and I was hoping to ask you a few questions about your relationship." No comment. Liam hung up immediately. The phone rang again 30 seconds later. Different number. He declined the call. Then another. And another. By the end of his shift, he'd received 7 calls from various news outlets, 3 emails to an address he barely used, and a message on social media from someone claiming to be a freelance journalist. When he picked up Sophie from school, one of the teachers stopped him. "Mr. Carter, I wanted to give you a heads up. Someone came by earlier asking about you and Sophie, said they were doing a story on local families. We didn't give them any information, but you might want to be aware." Liam's blood ran cold. "Thank you for telling me." He got Sophie home and locked the door behind them, feeling suddenly exposed. His apartment had always been a safe space, separate from the rest of the world. Now it felt like the walls were too thin, like anyone could peer inside and judge what they found. "Dad, you're being weird again," Sophie said, dropping her backpack by the door. "Sorry, baby, just a long day." "Is it because of the pictures?" Liam turned to look at her. "What pictures?"
"The ones of you and Evelyn. Jenny's mom showed her on her phone, and Jenny told me at recess." Sophie's expression was concerned but not upset. "Why are people taking pictures of you?" "How did you explain media intrusion to a 6-year-old? Because Evelyn is important to a lot of people who care about business stuff. And when important people date someone, other people get curious." "That's dumb." "Yeah, it kind of is." "Are you and Evelyn still together, or did you break up because of the pictures?" "We're figuring things out." Sophie studied him with those 2 knowing eyes. "You should call her. When you're figuring things out, it helps to talk." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just don't always notice." She headed toward her room. "I'm going to work on my diorama. You should call Evelyn." Liam did call, but Evelyn didn't answer. He tried again an hour later, still nothing. He sent a text. "Reporters are calling. One showed up at Sophie's school. This is getting out of hand." The response came 20 minutes later. "I know, I'm handling it. Trust me." But Liam wasn't sure what there was to handle. The story was already out there, spreading across the internet like wildfire. His phone kept buzzing with notifications, people he barely knew sending him the articles, asking if it was real, congratulating him or questioning his motives depending on their interpretation. He turned his phone off entirely and tried to focus on Sophie. They made dinner together, worked on her diorama, read 3 chapters of the book they were going through. Normal things, safe things. But underneath it all, Liam felt the weight of exposure, of having his private life turned into public speculation. That night, after Sophie was asleep, he turned his phone back on. 53 new messages, 12 missed calls, and 1 text from Evelyn that made his stomach drop. "Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. They're demanding I address the relationship publicly or end it privately. I'm not ending it, but I need you to know this is about to get worse before it gets better." Liam stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, "What does that mean? It means I'm choosing you, even if it costs me everything." His hands were shaking as he called her. She answered immediately. "Liam, don't do anything stupid," he said. "Don't blow up your company for me." "It's not stupid. It's the first honest thing I've done in years." "Evelyn, listen to me. We can figure this out quietly. You don't have to make some grand public statement. We can just be private about it. Keep our heads down until the story dies. That's not who I want to be, someone who hides what matters because it's inconvenient or complicated." Her voice was steady, certain in a way he'd never heard before. "You asked me to decide what I actually want. I'm deciding. I want you and Sophie. I want a life that's about more than just work. And I'm willing to fight for that, even if it means fighting my own board. They could fire you. Then they fire me, but at least I'll know I stood up for something real instead of just protecting my position." Liam didn't know what to say. Part of him was terrified she was making a huge mistake, throwing away everything she'd built for a relationship that was still figuring itself out. But another part of him, the part that had spent 6 years being careful and safe and alone, felt something that might have been hope. "What happens tomorrow?" he asked quietly. "I tell them the truth, that I'm in a relationship with someone who has no business connection to the company, that my personal life is separate from my professional life, and that if they can't accept that, they can find a new CEO. That's a hell of a gamble. You're worth the gamble." "You don't know that. We've known each other for 3 months. That's not enough time to risk everything." "Maybe not, but I'm done playing it safe. Safe got me a successful company and a life I barely recognize as my own. I want something different now. I want you. Liam closed his eyes, felt the full weight of what she was offering. Okay. Okay?
Okay, if you're willing to fight for this, then so am I. But Evelyn, you need to understand, I can't protect you from the fallout. If your board turns on you, if investors pull out, if the company suffers because of me, that's on you. I didn't ask for any of this. I know, and I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking you to be here while I deal with it.
I can do that.
Good. Because tomorrow is probably going to be brutal. They talked for another hour, making plans, discussing worst-case scenarios, trying to prepare for what was coming. When they finally hung up, Liam felt simultaneously terrified and more certain than he'd been in weeks. Evelyn had made her choice. Now he needed to trust that she meant it and that they could survive whatever came next. The next morning, Liam woke up to a text from Evelyn sent at 6 a.m. Going into the meeting. Wish me luck. He texted back, you don't need luck. You've got conviction. That's better. 3 hours passed. Liam tried to work but couldn't focus. His supervisor noticed but didn't comment, probably assuming it had to do with the media attention that was still buzzing around the warehouse. At 11:30, his phone rang. Evelyn. How did it go? He asked immediately.
I still have a job. Barely. She sounded exhausted. The board was furious, called the relationship a distraction, said it undermines investor confidence, threatened to replace me if I don't handle the situation. What did you say?
I told them my personal life is none of their business unless it directly impacts company performance. I presented metrics showing that despite the relationship becoming public, our recovery is still on track. And I made it clear that I won't be managed like a child who needs permission to date someone. That must have gone over well. They hated it, but they also can't deny the numbers. We're recovering faster than projected. New contracts are coming in. The product fixes are working. She paused. So they gave me an ultimatum. Keep the relationship completely separate from anything company-related. No appearing together at business events, no mentions in press, nothing that could be spun as using my position for personal benefit. That's harsh but manageable. There's more. They want me to sign a conduct clause. Basically, if the relationship causes any negative press or impacts the company's reputation, I'm out. No severance, no negotiation. Just gone. Liam felt like he'd been punched. Evelyn, that's insane. They're setting you up to fail. I know, but I signed it anyway. Why would you do that? Because the alternative was ending things with you, and I'm not doing that. Her voice was firm. I'd rather risk my position than give up on something that actually makes me happy. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you've built.
You're not. My board's unreasonable demands are the reason. My inability to set boundaries earlier in my career is the reason. But you? You're the reason I'm finally standing up for myself instead of just accepting whatever terms are handed to me. Liam sat down on a stack of pallets, trying to process. This is a lot. I know. And if it's too much, if you want to step back,
I don't. But I need you to understand what you're risking. If something goes wrong, if there's more bad press, you could lose everything. Then I'll lose everything. But at least I'll have tried to build a life that matters, not just a career that looks good on paper. They stayed on the phone for a few more minutes, neither of them quite knowing what else to say. When they hung up, Liam sat there in the warehouse, surrounded by boxes and pallets and the ordinary machinery of his ordinary job, and wondered how his life had gotten so complicated so fast. That evening, Evelyn came over. She looked wrung out, her usual composure cracked around the edges. Sophie ran to hug her the moment she walked in, and Liam watched Evelyn's expression soften as she held his daughter. I missed you, Sophie said. Are you staying for dinner? If that's okay with your dad. It's okay, Liam said. They made spaghetti again, the meal that had sat cold and uneaten 2 weeks ago. This time Evelyn was there for all of it, helping Sophie measure ingredients, laughing when flour ended up everywhere, sitting at their small table like she belonged there. After Sophie went to bed, Liam and Evelyn sat on the couch in the dim light of the living room. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not running when things got complicated. A lot of people would have.
I thought about it, Liam admitted. When I saw those articles, when reporters started calling, Part of me wanted to just end it and go back to how things were before. Simple, safe, uncomplicated. Why didn't you? Because Sophie told me I should call you. Said that when you're figuring things out, it helps to talk. He smiled slightly. She's smarter than both of us combined. She really is. Evelyn shifted closer to him on the couch. I meant what I said, about choosing you, about wanting this to work. I know. I just hope you don't regret it. I won't. Even if everything falls apart, I won't regret trying.
Liam pulled her against him, felt her relax into his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being together in the quiet of his apartment. Outside, the city hummed with its constant noise. Inside, for the first time in weeks, things felt almost settled. But Liam knew this was just the eye of the storm. The real test was still coming. Whether they could actually build something lasting while the world watched and judged and waited for them to fail. The storm didn't wait long to hit. 4 days after Evelyn signed the conduct clause, a business blog published a hit piece. The headline was designed for maximum damage. Evelyn Cross's new romance raises questions about judgment and focus. The article was a masterclass in implication without outright accusation, suggesting that her relationship with Liam showed poor decision-making, that she was distracted during a critical recovery period, that dating someone outside her professional sphere indicated a lack of seriousness about her role. The comment section exploded. Half defended her right to a personal life. The other half questioned everything from her competence to her motives. Some suggested Liam was a gold digger. Others speculated that Evelyn was having some kind of breakdown, citing the product failure as evidence she was already struggling. Liam read the article at work during his lunch break and felt sick. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was character assassination, and it was happening because of him. He called Evelyn immediately. Did you see it? My PR team sent it to me an hour ago. They're drafting a response. Her voice was tight but controlled. It's brutal, but it's also exactly what we expected. This is what they were waiting for. You're bored. They're going to say this proves the relationship is damaging the company. Probably, but unless they can show actual business impact, they can't do anything about it. Evelyn, this is impact. Your reputation is being shredded in public. My reputation will survive. I've weathered worse. She didn't sound convinced, though. The real problem is if investors start pulling out because they think I'm not focused. That would give the board ammunition. Has that happened? Not yet. But my CFO called this morning, said a few investors have reached out with concerns. Nothing concrete, just testing the waters to see how serious this is.
Liam closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. This isn't your fault. It's because of me, though. It's because business media has nothing better to do than speculate about people's personal lives. You didn't write that article. You didn't create the culture that makes my dating someone newsworthy. Her voice softened. I'm not backing down, Liam. Not now. But the pressure kept building. Over the next week, 3 more articles appeared, each one finding new angles to question Evelyn's judgment. One focused on the age gap. She was 28, Liam 32, but they spun it as her dating someone older and established, which somehow contradicted her young innovator image. Another dug into Liam's background, found out he'd dropped out of community college, worked in a warehouse, and presented it as evidence they were from incompatible worlds. The worst one included an interview with someone who claimed to be a former employee of Evelyn's company. The source, speaking anonymously, said that Evelyn had become noticeably distracted in recent months, that she'd been delegating more and taking longer lunches. The implication was clear. The relationship was affecting her work, just as the board feared. That's bullshit, Evelyn said when Liam asked about it. They were at his apartment, Sophie already in bed, and Evelyn looked more exhausted than he'd ever seen her. I've delegated more because that's what you told me to do, because I was trying to create better work-life balance. And longer lunches? I started taking actual lunch breaks instead of eating at my desk. That's not distraction, that's basic human functioning. The article makes it sound like you're neglecting the company. I'm not. Our numbers are good. Recovery is on track. But none of that matters when people want a narrative about a woman who lost focus because of a man. She laughed bitterly. If I were a male CEO dating someone, this wouldn't even be a story. But because I'm a woman, my personal life is apparently evidence of professional incompetence. Liam couldn't argue with that. He'd seen enough to know she was right. The scrutiny she faced was gendered in ways that made him angry and helpless at the same time. The real breaking point came 2 weeks later. Liam was at work when his supervisor called him into the office. The man's expression was uncomfortable, apologetic even.
"We've got a problem," the supervisor said. "Had a call this morning from corporate. Apparently someone's been asking questions about you, about your work performance, your history with the company, whether there are any disciplinary issues on your record." Liam's stomach dropped. "Who was asking?" "They didn't say directly, but I'm guessing it's related to your girlfriend situation. Someone's digging into your background." The supervisor shifted in his chair. "Look, I don't care who you date, and your work's always been solid, but corporate is concerned about media attention. They don't want reporters showing up here, bothering other employees, making the company look bad by association. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you might want to keep your head down. And if the media attention doesn't die down soon, corporate might decide it's easier to let you go than deal with the hassle." "That's not legal. They can't fire me for who I date." "No, but they can find other reasons if they want to. You know how it works." The supervisor's tone was sympathetic but resigned. "I'm just giving you a heads up. Watch yourself." Liam left the office feeling like the walls were closing in. It wasn't enough that Evelyn's career was being threatened. Now his was too. And for what? Because they'd had the audacity to care about each other across some invisible class boundary that neither of them had asked for. He called Evelyn as soon as his shift ended. "Someone's investigating me. Called my work asking questions." "I know. My PR team got wind of it. It's a freelance investigator, probably hired by one of the business blogs looking for dirt." She sounded furious. "I'm having my lawyer send cease and desist letters. But Liam, they're not going to find anything because there's nothing to find. You're a good person with a clean record who's doing his best to raise his daughter. That's the story. It doesn't matter. Just the investigation existing is enough to make my employers nervous. They basically told me I'm on thin ice. Then quit." "What?" "Quit. I'll hire you at my company, not in some made-up position, actual work that uses your skills. Or I'll help you find something better. You're too smart to be stacking boxes anyway." "Evelyn, that's exactly the kind of thing that would prove everyone right. That I'm using you for opportunities. Who cares what people think? I do. And so should you. If I quit my job and you immediately hire me, the headlines write themselves. Your board would have the ammunition they need to remove you." She was quiet for a moment. "So what do we do?" "I don't know, but I'm not going to let you risk everything to give me a job I don't need." He pulled into his apartment parking lot, turned off the engine. "We just have to ride this out. Eventually, something else will become news and people will forget about us. And if they don't, then we deal with it. Together." But riding it out proved harder than either of them expected. The media attention didn't fade. It intensified. Someone leaked details about Liam's ex-wife, about how she'd left him and Sophie. The article spun it as a sob story designed to garner sympathy, questioned whether Evelyn was dating him out of some misguided savior complex. Then they went after Sophie, not directly. Even tabloid journalism had some boundaries. But articles started mentioning that Liam had a daughter, that Evelyn had been seen with the child, speculating about whether she was ready for instant motherhood, or if this was just a phase that would end badly for everyone involved. That was when Liam hit his limit. "I need you to pull back," he told Evelyn. They were on the phone, late at night, both of them worn down by weeks of constant pressure. "Stop coming to the apartment. Stop being seen with me and Sophie. We need distance until this dies down." "No." "Evelyn." "No. I'm not hiding like I'm ashamed of you. I'm not going to let them dictate how I live my life. This isn't about shame. It's about protecting Sophie. She doesn't deserve to have her name in articles, to have her friends' parents asking questions, to have her life dissected because I'm dating someone famous. I'm not famous. I'm a tech CEO most people have never heard of. You're famous enough. And Sophie is off limits." His voice was firm. "I won't negotiate on this." Evelyn was silent for a long moment. "What if I make a statement? Tell the press to leave you and Sophie alone, that our relationship is private and they need to respect boundaries? That would just add fuel to the fire, make it a bigger story. Then what do you want me to do?" "I want you to let me handle my side of this. Keep Sophie out of it completely. If that means we don't see each other for a while, then that's what it means. Liam, we can't let them win. If we hide now, we're admitting they're right.
that this relationship is something to be ashamed of. I don't care about winning or losing. I care about my daughter. He took a breath, tried to keep his voice level. You chose to fight your board. You chose to sign that conduct clause knowing what it meant. But Sophie didn't choose any of this, and I won't let her pay the price for our decisions. So what are you saying? That we take a break? I'm saying we need to be smarter about this. More careful. Careful means hiding. I'm done hiding. Then you're doing it without me. Because I won't put Sophie through this. Liam felt the words land like stones. I love you, Evelyn. But my daughter comes first, always. And right now, being with you is putting her in a spotlight she never asked for. The silence on the other end was devastating. When Evelyn finally spoke, her voice was small, broken in a way he'd never heard. You love me? Of all the things he'd said, that was what she'd heard. Liam closed his eyes, felt the truth of it settle in his chest. Yeah, I do. That's why this is so hard. I love you too. She was crying now. He could hear it. And I hate that loving you means choosing between you and everything else. You don't have to choose. You just have to trust me to protect my daughter, even if it means stepping back from you for a while. How long is a while? I don't know. Until the media loses interest, until your board situation stabilizes, until I can be sure that Sophie won't be collateral damage. That could be months. I know. I don't know if I can do that. Wait months, wondering if we're ever going to get back to normal. Normal's gone, Evelyn. It's been gone since those first photos leaked. We're in survival mode now. He kept his voice gentle despite the pain. And I need you to trust that I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it to protect the only person in this mess who can't protect herself. Evelyn's breathing was ragged. Okay, you're right. Sophie comes first. I don't want to lose you. You're not losing me. We're just pausing, taking pressure off until things calm down. And if they don't calm down, they will. Everything dies down eventually. We just have to be patient. But patience proved to be the hardest thing either of them had ever attempted. They stopped seeing each other in person. Their phone calls became shorter, more strained. Liam threw himself into work and parenting, trying to create normalcy for Sophie even as his own heart ached. Evelyn buried herself in the company, working longer hours than ever, using exhaustion as a shield against feeling too much. 3 weeks into their separation, Sophie asked the question Liam had been dreading. Is Evelyn ever coming back? They were making dinner, the same spaghetti they'd made with Evelyn what felt like a lifetime ago. Liam set down the wooden spoon carefully. I don't know, baby. Did you break up? We're taking some time apart. It's complicated. Sophie's expression was too knowing for a 6-year-old. You're sad all the time now. You were happy when she was here. I know, but sometimes being happy isn't enough. Sometimes you have to do what's right even when it's hard. What's right? Keeping you safe. Making sure you have a normal life without reporters and articles and people asking questions. I don't care about that stuff. You will when you're older, and I'm trying to protect you from it now so you don't have to care about it. Sophie was quiet for a moment, stirring the sauce with intense concentration. Do you think she misses us? I know she does. Then why can't she just come over? We can have dinner like normal people. Nobody has to know. It's not that simple. Grown-up stuff is stupid. Liam couldn't help but smile slightly. Yeah, it really is. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam sat in the dark living room and stared at his phone. He wanted to call Evelyn, to hear her voice, to tell her that Sophie missed her, and he missed her, and maybe they'd made a mistake trying to handle this by staying apart. But he also knew that giving in now would just restart the cycle, the media attention, the pressure, the threat to Sophie's privacy. His phone buzzed, a text from Evelyn. I can't do this anymore. Liam's heart stopped. He called immediately. What does that mean? He asked when she answered. It means I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting my board, fighting the media, fighting to prove that wanting a normal relationship doesn't make me incompetent. And I'm especially tired of being away from you and Sophie because other people can't mind their own business. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done hiding. I'm done letting other people's opinions control my life. Her voice was steady, determined. I'm going to issue a statement. Tell the press that yes, I'm in a relationship, that it's serious,
and that my personal life is off limits for further speculation, and then I'm going to dare my board to do something about it. Evelyn, that's
Risky? Stupid? Career suicide? She laughed. Probably all three. But I don't care anymore. I've spent 3 weeks being miserable without you, trying to prove I can compartmentalize my life into neat boxes that don't overlap. And I can't. I don't want to. I want to be with you and Sophie, and I want to build my company, and I want both of those things at the same time without having to justify it to anyone. Your board will use this against you.
Let them try. I've got the numbers on my side. Recovery is ahead of schedule. We've signed 2 new major contracts in the last month. Our product updates are getting positive reviews. The only thing they can claim is that my relationship is a distraction, and I can prove it's not. And if you can't prove it, if they decide perception matters more than performance,
Then I walk away.
I take my skills and my reputation, whatever's left of it, and I start something new. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror and know I didn't sacrifice the best thing in my life for a job. Liam felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just the relief of hearing someone fight for him the way he'd fought for Sophie his entire adult life.
Are you sure about this? He asked quietly.
I've never been more sure of anything. I'm tired of living scared, tired of letting other people's judgment determine how I live. She paused. I love you, Liam, and I love Sophie, and I'm done pretending that loving you is something I need to hide or manage or apologize for. What do you need from me? Just be there. When the backlash comes, when it gets ugly, and it will get ugly, just be there, that's all. I can do that. Good. Because I'm issuing the statement tomorrow morning, and after that I'm coming to your apartment for dinner whether the whole world is watching or not. Evelyn made good on her promise. The statement went out at 9 the next morning, posted to her company's blog, and distributed to major business outlets. It was short, direct, and gave nothing away. I am in a committed relationship with someone I care deeply about. Like everyone, I'm entitled to a personal life separate from my professional responsibilities. My relationship does not impact my ability to lead this company, as our performance metrics clearly demonstrate. I ask that media respect the privacy of everyone involved, particularly those who never sought public attention. This will be my only statement on the matter. The response was immediate and divided. Some praised her for setting boundaries. Others called it defensive and said it proved the relationship was affecting her judgment. Her board called an emergency meeting. Investors started making noise. The business blogs had a field day analyzing every word choice, every implication. And at 6 that evening, Evelyn showed up at Liam's apartment with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. Sophie opened the door and launched herself at Evelyn with a squeal of delight. You came back! I did. I'm sorry I was gone so long. It's okay. Dad's been sad, but he tried to hide it. He's bad at hiding stuff. Sophie grabbed Evelyn's hand and pulled her inside. We're having spaghetti, but Thai food is better. Can we have both? Absolutely, we can have both. Liam stood in the kitchen doorway watching them and felt something in his chest crack open. Not breaking, expanding, making room for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this after all. They had dinner together, all 3 of them at the small table in Liam's cramped kitchen. Sophie talked nonstop about school, her diorama, a new friend who also liked dinosaurs. Evelyn listened like it was the most important conversation she'd ever had. Liam watched them together and thought about how much had changed in 4 months, how much had been tested and survived. After Sophie went to bed, Liam and Evelyn sat on the couch in the dim living room. How bad was the board meeting? He asked. About as bad as expected. Lots of yelling, threats, ultimatums. They want me to recant the statement, claim it was premature, distance myself from you publicly. What did you tell them? I told them to review the performance data. Told them that if they could show any concrete evidence that my relationship had negatively impacted the company, I'd consider their concerns. Otherwise, they could accept that I'm allowed to have a personal life. And they couldn't show anything, because there's nothing to show. We're recovering faster than projected. Our new product launches are being well received. Client satisfaction is up. The only thing they could point to was media speculation, which I'm not responsible for. So they backed down? Not exactly. They're giving me 30 days to prove the relationship won't affect future performance. If anything slips, missed targets, negative press that impacts business, investor concerns that turn into actual pullout,
I'm done. Liam pulled her closer. That's a lot of pressure. Yeah, but it's also finite. 30 days. I can handle 30 days. And then what? Then hopefully they shut up and let me run my company in peace. Or they fire me and I figure out what comes next. She looked up at him. Either way, I'm not giving you up. That's not negotiable anymore. Even if it costs you everything? You and Sophie aren't nothing. You're the most important thing. If I lose the company but keep you, I still come out ahead. Liam kissed her then, deep and certain, trying to convey everything he couldn't find words for. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling. I meant what I said in that statement. I love you. And I'm done hiding it. I love you too, even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated. She settled against him, her head on his shoulder. That's when it matters most. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being together in the quiet. Outside, the city continued its endless noise. Inside, despite everything still uncertain and unresolved, things felt right in a way they hadn't in weeks. The next 30 days were brutal. Evelyn worked constantly, managing the company's recovery while also managing the fallout from her statement. The media attention gradually shifted from speculation about the relationship to focusing on her business performance, which was exactly what she wanted. Every metric, every contract, every product review became ammunition, either for her or against her, depending on the outcome. Liam supported her however he could. He took over all the household stuff on evenings when she was too exhausted to function. He listened when she needed to vent about her board or investors, or the impossible standards she was being held to. He reminded her to eat, to sleep, to take breaks even when she insisted she didn't have time. Sophie, in her 6-year-old wisdom, seemed to understand that Evelyn was fighting for something important. She didn't complain when Evelyn missed dinners or showed up late. She just made welcome home cards and asked thoughtful questions and generally existed as the bright spot in both their lives. On day 28 of the 30-day deadline, Evelyn's company announced record quarterly results. Revenue was up 30%. Customer retention had improved. New contracts exceeded projections. The product that had failed so spectacularly months ago had been fixed and relaunched to positive reviews. The board had no choice but to acknowledge what the numbers made obvious. Evelyn was doing her job, and doing it well, regardless of who she was dating. The formal meeting happened on day 30. Evelyn went in prepared for a fight, but what she got instead was grudging acceptance. "You've proven your point," the board chair said, according to what Evelyn told Liam later that night. "The relationship hasn't impacted performance. We were wrong to imply it would." "Does this mean the conduct clause is void?" "Not void, but we're willing to renegotiate terms, something less draconian." It wasn't total victory, but it was enough. Evelyn had fought for the right to have a personal life without sacrificing her professional credibility, and she'd won. That night, they celebrated at Liam's apartment with cheap champagne and pizza. Sophie insisted on staying up past her bedtime to toast with apple juice, declaring it a special occasion. When she finally went to bed, Liam and Evelyn collapsed on the couch together. "We did it," Evelyn said, sounding amazed. "We actually survived." "You did it. I just existed in your vicinity." "Don't downplay your part. You kept me sane. You and Sophie both." She turned to look at him. "I couldn't have done this without knowing you were here, supporting me even when everything was falling apart. That's what you do when you love someone. You show up." "I'm still learning that, but I'm trying." Liam kissed her forehead. "I know. And you're doing better than you think." They sat in comfortable silence, both of them processing what the last few months had been. The chaos, the pressure, the moments when it seemed like everything would collapse. But they'd made it through. Scarred, exhausted, but together. "What happens now?" Evelyn asked quietly. "Now we figure out how to be normal. Or as normal as we can be, given everything. I don't even know what normal looks like anymore." "Me neither, but we'll figure it out." He squeezed her hand. Together. Normal, as it turned out, was harder to define than either of them expected. The media attention didn't disappear overnight. It faded gradually, like a stain that needed multiple washes to fully remove. Business blogs moved on to other stories. The investigator stopped calling Liam's workplace. Sophie's school stopped getting inquiries. Life didn't return to what it had been before. That version of normal was gone forever.
But it settled into something new, something they had to learn to navigate together. Evelyn started coming to dinner 3 nights a week. Not every night, because she was still running a company, and Liam still valued the routines he'd built with Sophie. But 3 nights felt right, enough presence to matter, enough space to breathe. She learned Sophie's bedtime routine, the exact way to read Where the Wild Things Are, with the right voices and pauses. She learned that Liam took his coffee black because he'd trained himself not to need cream when money was tight, and that he still drank it that way out of habit. Liam learned that Evelyn worked best in the early mornings, that she got anxious when her inbox hit triple digits, that she had nightmares sometimes about standing in front of her board with nothing to show for her efforts. He learned to recognize when she needed space and when she needed to be pulled out of her own head. 2 months after the board meeting, on a random Tuesday evening, Sophie asked the question that had been building for weeks. Is Evelyn going to live here now? They were cleaning up after dinner, the 3 of them moving around Liam's small kitchen in a choreography they'd developed without planning it. Evelyn froze mid-reach for a dish towel. That's a big question, Liam said carefully. Why do you ask? Because she's here all the time, and she has a toothbrush in the bathroom, and her work clothes are in your closet. Sophie said it matter-of-factly, like she was listing observations from a science experiment. Also, you're happier when she's here. Both of you are. Liam looked at Evelyn, who looked back with an expression caught between panic and hope. They hadn't talked about this, about what came next, about whether their relationship was heading toward something permanent or if they were still in the phase of proving it could work at all. Would you want her to live here? Liam asked his daughter. Sophie considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. I think so, but this apartment is kind of small. Her fancy apartment is bigger. My apartment is ridiculous, Evelyn said quietly. All glass and steel and furniture that looks nice but isn't comfortable. It's never felt like home. What does home feel like? Sophie asked. Evelyn looked around Liam's cramped kitchen with its chipped counters and the refrigerator covered in Sophie's drawings and the table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under one leg. Like this, like people who actually want you there. Sophie nodded like this made perfect sense. Then you should probably live here, but we'd need a bigger place. I don't want to share my room. That's fair, Liam said, trying not to laugh at how his 6-year-old was casually planning their future living arrangements. But maybe Evelyn and I should talk about this first? Okay, I'm going to work on my diorama. Sophie skipped off to her room, leaving them alone in the kitchen. Evelyn set down the dish towel she'd been clutching. I didn't expect that. She's observant, always has been. Is she right? Am I here all the time? You're here a lot, but that's not a complaint. What is it? Liam dried his hands, turned to face her properly. It's a question about what we're doing, where this is going. Where do you want it to go? I want you here, not just 3 nights a week, but all the time. I want to wake up next to you and fight about whose turn it is to take out the trash and figure out how to merge our lives into something that actually works. He paused. But I also want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. Not because the media pressure forced us together, or because we're trying to prove something to your board. Those aren't my reasons. Evelyn stepped closer to him. My reason is that I love you, both of you, and I want to build a life that includes both my work and my family, because that's what you and Sophie are now, family. The word landed with weight. Family. Liam had been a family of 2 for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to expand that circle. To let someone else in, to trust they'd stay. My apartment is too small, he said. If we're going to do this, we need more space. We could get a house, something with a yard for Sophie, enough room that we're not living on top of each other. I can't afford a house. I can. Evelyn, before you get proud about it, hear me out. She took his hands. I'm not trying to buy our relationship or make you feel less than. But I have resources you don't, and if we're going to build a life together, those resources become ours, shared. That's how this works. I don't want to be someone you support. You wouldn't be. You'd be contributing what you can, your time with Sophie, your half of the household stuff, your income from work. I'd be contributing money because I have it. Neither is worth more than the other. They're just different contributions to the same goal. Liam wanted to argue, but he couldn't find the logic to refute her. She was right. If they were going to do this, really commit to building something together, they had to get past the idea that equal meant identical.
Okay, he said finally. We look for a house. Something reasonable. Not some mansion that makes me feel like I'm visiting instead of living there.
Agreed. 3 bedrooms, yard, good school district for Sophie. And we tell people we're doing it. No hiding, no managing perception, just living our lives. Even if your coworkers ask invasive questions, they'll get over it. And if they don't, I'll find a new job. He pulled her closer. I'm done letting other people's opinions dictate how I live.
You taught me that.
Pretty sure you taught me that? Then we taught each other.
They kissed there in the kitchen, and it felt different than before. More settled, less like something they were fighting to protect, and more like something they were choosing to build.
The house hunt took 6 weeks. Evelyn wanted to throw money at the problem and hire a realtor who could find them something immediately. Liam insisted they take their time, visit neighborhoods, make sure Sophie liked the area. They compromised by looking at houses every weekend, bringing Sophie along so she could veto anything that didn't feel right. They found it in a neighborhood 15 minutes from Sophie's school. 3 bedrooms, small yard with an old oak tree perfect for climbing, kitchen that needed updating but had good bones. It wasn't fancy, the floors creaked and the bathroom tiles were from the 70s, but when Sophie ran through the rooms and declared the smaller bedroom perfect for my dinosaur collection, Liam knew it was right. Evelyn bought it outright, no mortgage, which made Liam uncomfortable until she explained that keeping her money tied up in investments she barely understood made less sense than putting it into a house where they'd actually live. They agreed he'd pay for utilities and groceries, contribute to household expenses in ways that felt equitable without requiring a spreadsheet to track. Moving day was chaos. Liam's belongings fit into 1 truck. Evelyn's furniture from her apartment took 2, and most of it ended up donated because it looked absurd in the new house. Sophie supervised everything with the authority of a general, directing where boxes should go and making sure her diorama was transported with appropriate care. Mrs. Chen came to see them off from the old apartment, hugged Liam tight, and whispered, "You deserve this. Don't forget that." The first night in the new house, they ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the living room floor because their furniture was scattered across 3 rooms in various states of assembly. Sophie fell asleep on the couch at 8, exhausted from excitement. Liam carried her to her new bedroom, tucked her in with her worn stuffed rabbit. When he came back to the living room, Evelyn was standing at the window, looking out at their small yard. The oak tree was visible in the glow from the porch light, its branches swaying slightly in the evening breeze. "You okay?" he asked, coming up behind her. "I'm trying to figure out if this is real. If I actually get to have this, the house, the family, the whole thing. It's real. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for my board to have another crisis, or for the media to decide we're interesting again, or for you to wake up and realize you're better off without the complications I bring." Liam turned her to face him. "Stop waiting for disaster. We've already been through the worst of it. Everything from here is just figuring out how to live together, which regular people do every day without it being newsworthy." "We're not regular people." "Yes, we are. You just forgot that somewhere along the way." He touched her face gently. "You're not just a CEO. You're someone who burns toast, who steals the blankets at night, who cries during animated movies when the characters reunite with their families. That person is just as real as the one who runs board meetings. I like that person better." "Good, because that's who I fell in love with." They stood there for a while, holding each other in their new living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and mismatched furniture. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. Evelyn had envisioned continued success, maybe a penthouse, certainly not a 3-bedroom house with creaky floors and a yard that needed mowing. Liam had imagined staying small and safe, just him and Sophie, never risking his heart again. But life rarely matched the plans people made. Sometimes it offered something better, if you were brave enough to accept it. The next few months were an exercise in adjustment. Evelyn learned to navigate PTA meetings and neighborhood block parties, events that required completely different skills than investor presentations. Liam learned to be comfortable in a house he hadn't paid for, to accept that Evelyn's financial contribution didn't diminish his role in their family. Sophie thrived. Her bedroom became a museum of dinosaur knowledge. Her diorama expanded to include a volcano and several new prehistoric species. She started inviting friends over, Delighted to show off the yard and the treehouse Liam and Evelyn built together over 3 weekends of frustrated carpentry. Work remained demanding for both of them. Evelyn's company continued to grow, which meant more travel, more pressure, more hours. But she'd learned to set boundaries, to delegate, to trust her team. She made it to Sophie's school play, where their daughter played a tree with surprising dramatic intensity. She took actual lunch breaks. She stopped answering emails after 9 p.m. Liam stayed at the warehouse for another 6 months before Evelyn finally convinced him to consider other options. Not working for her company, they both agreed that would be too complicated, but using the skills he'd developed managing logistics and inventory to find something with better pay and hours. He ended up at a mid-sized distribution company, still warehouse work, but in a supervisory role that paid nearly double what he'd been making. "I feel weird about this," he told Evelyn after accepting the job. "Like I'm only getting it because of who you know." "You're getting it because you interviewed well and have 10 years of relevant experience. The connection just got your resume looked at. The rest was you." "You sure about that?" "Completely. But even if I wasn't, who cares? People use connections all the time. It's not cheating, it's networking. You just happen to network by falling in love with someone who knows people." The new job meant better hours, which meant more time with Sophie. More time to cook dinners and help with homework and build elaborate blanket forts that Evelyn would come home to find occupying the entire living room. 6 months into living together, they had their first real fight. Not about money or work or the media, about dishes. Specifically, about how Evelyn kept leaving coffee mugs scattered around the house and Liam's repeated requests that she put them in the dishwasher when ignored. "I forget," Evelyn said, defensive. "I'm thinking about work and I just set them down and forget." "Then think less about work and more about the fact that I'm not your housekeeper." "I never said you were." "No, but you act like someone else will handle it, and that someone is always me." It was a stupid fight, the kind every couple had, but it felt enormous in the moment. They said things that were harsher than necessary, both of them tired and stressed and taking it out on each other over something that didn't actually matter. Sophie, hearing them argue from her room, came out and stood in the kitchen doorway. "Are you breaking up?" The question stopped them both cold. "No, baby," Liam said immediately. "We're just disagreeing." "Mom and you didn't disagree. She just left." Sophie's voice was small, scared, in a way that broke Liam's heart. "I'm not your mom," Evelyn said gently, kneeling down to Sophie's level. "And I'm not leaving. Your dad and I are having an argument, which is normal and healthy. It means we're comfortable enough to be honest with each other, even when we're frustrated." "But what if it gets too big? What if you decide it's too hard?" "Then we work through it. Together." That's what people do when they love each other. They don't run away at the first sign of conflict. Evelyn looked at Liam. "Right?" "Right," Liam agreed, feeling the fight drain out of him. "I'm sorry I snapped at you. I was tired and I took it out on you over something small. And I'm sorry I keep leaving mugs everywhere. I'll try harder to remember." Evelyn stood up, held out her hand. "Truce?" "Truce." They shook hands formally, which made Sophie giggle, and the tension broke. Later, after Sophie was in bed, they talked about it properly. About how Liam sometimes still expected to be disappointed, still waited for Evelyn to prove she couldn't handle the mundane frustrations of domestic life. About how Evelyn sometimes forgot that building a relationship meant paying attention to small things, not just grand gestures. "We're going to keep messing this up," Evelyn said. They were in bed, the house quiet around them. "I'm going to leave mugs places, and you're going to assume the worst, and we're going to have stupid fights about nothing. Probably, but we'll also figure it out. That's the difference between us and my ex-wife. She gave up when it got hard. We don't." "How do you know I won't give up?" "Because you didn't. You've had 100 opportunities to walk away and you chose to stay. Every time." Evelyn curled against him. "I'm never going to be perfect at this. The domestic stuff, the parenting stuff. I'm always going to be a little too focused on work, a little too intense about metrics and goals." "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be here. And you are." "Yeah, I am." The months accumulated into a year. Then more than a year. Sophie turned 7, then 8. Her dinosaur phase evolved into an astronomy phase, which meant their yard became home to a telescope, and their evenings included stargazing sessions where Sophie explained constellations with authority that may or may not have been accurate. Evelyn's company stabilized, then thrived. The board stopped questioning her judgment. New investors came in. The product line expanded. She promoted her COO to president and started delegating more of the day-to-day operations, freeing herself to focus on strategy and long-term planning. And somewhere in that time, without any formal decision, they stopped being Liam and Evelyn and became a family. Not perfect. Sophie still had meltdowns. Evelyn still worked too much sometimes. Liam still struggled with accepting help. But real, present. Committed to showing up even when it was hard. One evening, almost 2 years after they'd moved into the house, Liam came home from work to find Evelyn and Sophie in the backyard. They'd spread a blanket under the oak tree and were lying on their backs looking at the sky. He stood at the window for a moment, just watching them, and felt something settle in his chest. This was what he'd been afraid to want. This peace, this normalcy, the sense of being part of something bigger than his own fear of being left again. He went outside and lay down between them. Sophie immediately snuggled against his side. "What are we looking at?" he asked. "Clouds," Sophie said. "Evelyn's trying to find one that looks like a dinosaur, but they all look like blobs." "They're not blobs, they're cumulus formations," Evelyn protested. "And that one definitely looks like a stegosaurus." "That's a blob with wishful thinking." Liam smiled, listening to them bicker affectionately. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere down the street, someone was grilling, and the smell of charcoal drifted on the breeze. Normal suburban evening sounds, a dog barking, kids playing, the distant hum of traffic. "I want to marry you," Liam said suddenly. Evelyn turned her head to look at him. "What?" "I want to marry you. Not because we need to make some statement or prove anything to anyone, just because I want to, because you're my family and I want it to be official." Sophie sat up, eyes wide. "Are you proposing? You're supposed to have a ring and get on one knee and everything." "I don't have a ring right now, but yeah, I'm proposing." Evelyn sat up too, and her eyes were bright with tears. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. I know it's not romantic doing it here in the yard with no planning, but that feels right for us. Nothing about our relationship has followed a script. Why should this?" "You really want to marry me?" "I really do, if you'll have me." Evelyn looked at Sophie. "What do you think? Should I marry your dad?" Sophie pretended to consider this deeply. "Well, you already live here, and you're good at helping with math homework, and you make Dad happy." She nodded decisively. "Yeah, you should marry him." "Then I guess I'm saying yes." Evelyn was crying now, smiling through the tears. "Yes, I'll marry you, even though you proposed in the yard without a ring like some kind of amateur. I can do it again properly if you want. Get a ring, plan something elaborate." "Don't you dare, this is perfect, this is us." Liam kissed her there in the grass, with Sophie cheering beside them and the sky turning deeper shades of evening around them. It wasn't the proposal he'd given his first wife, all nervous formality and traditional expectations. It was better, more honest, built on years of showing up and choosing each other and learning that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about small moments accumulated into a life. They got married 3 months later in the backyard under the oak tree where he'd proposed. Sophie was the flower girl and took her responsibilities extremely seriously, practicing her walk for weeks beforehand. Mrs. Chen came, and Marcus from Liam's old job, and a handful of Evelyn's employees who'd become actual friends rather than just colleagues. The ceremony was short, officiated by a judge Evelyn knew from some professional connection. When the judge asked if anyone objected, Sophie raised her hand. "Yes," the judge said, amused. "I don't object. I just want to say that I'm glad they're doing this. Dad's been alone for a really long time, and Evelyn's good for him. She makes him remember to smile." Everyone laughed, and Liam felt his throat get tight. His daughter, 8 years old and already wiser than he'd been at 30. The reception was a cookout, nothing fancy. Someone had brought a speaker and music played while people ate burgers and potato salad and talked about normal things that had nothing to do with business or media or any of the chaos that had defined their relationship in the beginning. Late in the evening, after most guests had left and Sophie had fallen asleep on a lawn chair, Liam and Evelyn slow danced in the grass to a song neither of them recognized. "Are you happy?" Evelyn asked quietly. "More than I thought possible. You?" "Terrified mostly, but in a good way. The kind of scared that means you're doing something that matters." That's fair. Marriage is terrifying. Is it better the second time? Liam thought about his first marriage, how young they'd been, how unprepared for the reality of building a life together, how it had collapsed under the weight of expectations neither of them could meet. It's different. Better because we know what we're getting into. We've already seen each other at our worst and chosen to stay anyway. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, Evelyn said. Forget important dates, work too late, say the wrong thing when you need support. I know, and I'm going to get too protective of Sophie. Assume you're not as invested as I am, pull away when things get complicated. So we're both going to mess it up, constantly. But we'll also fix it. That's the difference. They kept dancing as the last of the evening light faded and the first stars became visible. In the house behind them, their home, Sophie slept safely and their life together spread out in both directions. The past they'd survived and the future they were choosing to build. Liam had spent 6 years believing that love was something that happened to other people, something that failed him once and couldn't be trusted again. He'd built a life around protecting himself and Sophie from the possibility of that kind of hurt. But standing there with Evelyn in the yard of the house they owned together, married in front of people who cared about them, he understood something he hadn't before. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect or about relationships being easy. It was about finding someone willing to show up, day after day, through fights about dishes and media scandals and board meetings and all the ordinary struggles that made up a life. It was about choosing each other, not once in some romantic moment, but over and over again in all the small moments that actually mattered. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not giving up. On us. On this. For fighting for it even when it would have been easier to walk away. Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with Sophie, with your heart, with all the parts of yourself you kept protected for so long. We did good, didn't we? Evelyn smiled against his shoulder. Yeah, we did really good. The music changed to something upbeat and Sophie stirred on her lawn chair, blinking awake in confusion. She saw them dancing and immediately ran over, wedging herself between them and demanding to be included. They lifted her up, one of them on each side, and the three of them spun in clumsy circles while she giggled. This was the life Liam had been afraid to want. Messy and imperfect, and nothing like the fairy tales that promised easy happiness. But it was real, it was earned, and it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. And as the evening deepened into night, and they finally went inside together, tired and happy and home, Liam understood that sometimes the best things in life weren't the ones you planned for. They were the ones you almost walked away from, the ones that terrified you, the ones that required you to be braver than you thought possible. Sophie fell asleep between them that night, sprawled across their bed like she owned it. Evelyn looked at Liam over their daughter's sleeping form. This is our life now, she whispered. Is it what you expected? It's better than I expected. Better than I deserved. You deserve good things, Liam Carter. You always did. You just needed to believe it. He reached across Sophie to take Evelyn's hand. I believe it now. And lying there in the darkness, with his daughter sleeping peacefully, and his wife beside him, and the future spreading out uncertain but no longer frightening, Liam finally let himself accept what he'd been fighting against for years. He was allowed to be happy. He was allowed to have more than just survival. He was allowed to build a life that included love and partnership and all the complicated, beautiful mess that came with opening your heart to other people. The journey from that wedding where he'd sat alone planning his escape to this moment had been longer and harder than anything he could have imagined. But every struggle, every moment of doubt, every fight and reconciliation and choice to keep trying had led here. To a life that wasn't perfect, to a love that wasn't easy, to a family that was real and flawed and absolutely worth every risk it took to build. And that, Liam thought as sleep finally claimed him, was the only kind of happy ending that mattered. Not the one where everything worked out perfectly, but the one where you worked for it, fought for it, and chose it every single day. The one where you showed up. The one where you stayed. The one where love wasn't something that happened to you, but something you built together, one imperfect day at a time.